Shalom from Israel. This is Aaron Schaefer, tour guide Aaron, broadcasting live from my studio here in Beersheba. I'm so happy to have you all back here again for class number 7 in our series of studying Mishlei, the book of Proverbs from the Hebrew Bible. We're studying from the original Hebrew, and we're reading and translating and explaining with explanations based on the traditional Hebrew commentaries. Until this point, we got up to chapter 3, verse 26. And in this class, we're going to continue with verse 27 till the end of chapter 3, God willing. In the beginning of chapter 3, King Solomon spoke a lot about how God created the world. God controls everything. God is the one who gives you glory, who gives you grace. He's the one who gives you success. When you follow his ways, you don't have to be afraid. When you sleep, you won't fear. You don't have to be afraid from the wicked attacking you, because God will protect you. And in the end, when you have God on your side, nobody can overcome you. And even if it seems temporarily that you suffer from taking the right side in this world, ultimately, even those who don't get the reward in this world, they get their reward in the next world. So last week we left off right before the last section of chapter 3, where King Solomon starts to, verse by verse, give us very practical lessons about morality, really basic morality, but some things and morality that we see so many people, they just trample over these things and they don't really think much of it. As we read through some of these lessons, I'm sure many of you, like myself, will say, oh no, I don't do that. But then when you stop and you think more carefully, likely you will find that, like myself, you do some of these things at times, and we have to work very hard on ourselves to not partake in these kind of behaviors and ways of thinking that King Solomon is going to describe to us in the next verses. And what they all really come down to, they all come down to a sort of lack of true faith and trust in God, and true faith and trust in the idea that if we just do right, ultimately it will be for our own best good. I want to welcome Brian in Hawaii to the broadcast, and also Sandy, and also all the other people who are watching live on HAPS, on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube. I see Jose, I see Jani, I see John, Pierre, Nancy. My mom is watching from California. Welcome to everybody who's watching live on the live broadcast. Okay, so now we're going to continue reading and translating from verse 27 of chapter 3. Don't forget, feel free to ask questions or add comments in the live chat. The best place to comment is on the HAPS app, because if you're watching it on the HAPS app, HAPPS, then you can see all of the comments from YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, etc., and you can be a full participant in the conversation. But if you comment on any of the apps that you're watching on, I will see the comment. And if it's a relevant comment or question, I'll bring it up on the screen and we'll talk about it. Okay. Also, someone messaged me and asked that I be very careful to use the cursor and to follow the words like this when I read, because she's trying really hard to practice her Hebrew reading along with us as we read. And this is a very good exercise for her. And she's right. That's one of the main purposes of this class, is for people to strengthen their Hebrew reading. So I'm going to get this text as large as I could. And you guys should be able to see my cursor there. And we're going to read it line by line. Yes, Jani, we're doing Proverbs 3, Mishlei, verse 27. Hi, Esther in California. Okay, with no further ado. Al timna tov, al do not, timna withhold tov, good, mi ba'alav, from its masters or its owners. Biyot la'el yadcha. You see, sometimes in the text, you'll see a word like this that has no vowels, and then in brackets or parentheses, a similar word with vowels. This is a very interesting feature of the Hebrew text of the scriptures, that often you have words that are spelled one way, but they're read a completely different way. So we still retain the original spelling, which is the quote unquote incorrect spelling. It's not incorrect. It also has some meaning to it or some hint to why it's spelled that way, but it's retained. But then they tell you the correct way to read it, because it's not possible to pronounce it the way that it's spelled here and be grammatically correct. So this is something that you have many, many times throughout Hebrew text, and this is one of the first places where we're encountering it. So I just want to point it out. So al timnat tov mi ba'alav, do not withhold good from its owners. Biyot le'el yadcha, when you have the ability, la'asot, to do it, to do the good. So just about the grammar and the words, the word la'el, it sounds like the word of the name of God. El is the name of God. But here, the word means strength or ability, capability. For example, you have the term Elei haaretz, the strong people of the land. So the actual meaning of the word El is strong or strength. And so God is called by that name because he is strong and he has the ability. But here the word is used about us, that we have the strength to do. So King Solomon is telling us that often there is somebody who needs charity or needs help, or somebody who needs our time or our attention, and sometimes we really don't have the ability to help them. Sometimes we just don't have the ability. Somebody comes to you, a neighbor, a friend says, "Look, I'm short $100 to pay my rent this month. I'm going to get kicked out of my house. Could you please help me out?" And perhaps you yourself don't know how you're going to pay your rent this month. You're also having the same situation. And you say to him, "Wow, I really would love to help you. And if I had the ability, I would help you, but I just don't have the ability to help you." And you truly mean it. It's truly, you truly would help them, and you truly don't have the ability. So that's legitimate. We can't always help everybody all the time. We can always give a kind word. We can always give our sympathy. We can always give our feelings, our thoughts, our prayers, but we can't always actually help someone or solve someone's problem. So King Solomon isn't talking about that. He's talking about when we do have the ability to help somebody else and we choose not to do it. We say, "I don't want to do it. I'm too lazy to do it." And so we start to make excuses about why we're not doing it, when in reality, it's just because we don't want to. So that's what he means when he says, "Al timnat tov mi ba'alav," do not withhold good from its possessor. What does it mean, its possessor? In other words, when we help someone else, someone other than ourselves, and we give them charity or we give them our time or our energy, in Hebrew, that's called tzedakah. And tzedakah is often translated as charity. But the real meaning of the word tzedakah is justice. Because really, nothing that we have belongs to us. The only thing that belongs to us is our choices. When we choose good over evil, that truly belongs to us. That choice that we made is truly our choice, since we have free choice and free will. That's the only thing that actually is our doing and belongs to us, are the choices we make between right and wrong, good and evil. But none of the physical possessions that we have really belong to us. They were all given to us by God. If we're wealthy, God could have put us in a situation where we would be poor and we wouldn't be able to climb out of that poverty. So everything that we have, we like to think that we earned it or that we got it because we have it coming, but that's not necessarily the case. Sometimes God chooses to make one person wealthy so that he can give to others. And so that's why charity isn't called charity in Hebrew. It's called tzedakah, which means justice, because it's only just that one that has shares with those who don't have. One who is able shares with those who are not able. And that's called tzedakah, or justice. And it's not exactly charity, but it's the only word we have for charity in the Hebrew language. And that's a commandment in the Torah, to give tzedakah, to help those who have less than us. And so King Solomon, coming from that way of thinking, says, don't withhold good from its owners. Al timnat tov mibalav. Because when you give charity to someone else, tzedakah, you're not giving him something that's yours, you're giving him what's his. He has it coming, but God wanted that it should come through you. He wanted to give you the opportunity to make the choice to give it. And when you make the choice to give it of your own free will and nobody forced you to do it, then actually now you own what you gave. And it seems like a paradox, but that's the reality. The only money that a person ever owns is that money that they choose to use to do a mitzvah, whether it's to support holy things like Torah study or synagogues, or whether it's to feed the poor or loan money to people without interest that need help. When you give that money away, since you chose to do it and you had free will, and your free will is truly yours, the money isn't yours, but the free will is yours. So when you make that choice, that belongs to you, so to speak. So that in the world to come, after 120 years in this world, when you're asked, what do you have? What do you bring with you? You can't bring your bank account with you. You can't bring your cars, your house. You can't bring any of it with you. But what you do bring with you are the righteous choices that you made with whatever God entrusted in your hands. And so that's why the good, King Solomon says, it belongs to the other person. Let's read it again. Al timnat tov mi ba'alav. Do not withhold good from its owner. Baal is a master or owner. Biot le'el yadcha la'asot, since you have the ability to do. And when you do, you're actually giving it over to its rightful owner, so to speak. Okay, let's move on to verse 28. Al tomar l'reacha, do not say to your fellow, lech vashuv, go and return. Lech, go, vashuv, return. Umachar eten v'yesh itach. Tomorrow I will give. Machar, tomorrow, eten, I will give. V'yesh itach, and it will be with you. You'll have it when you come back tomorrow. So this is something that all of us are guilty of, I believe. I'm sure I've done it. I know that I've done it many times. Somebody comes and they want your help, and you have the ability to help them. So if you don't have the ability, you just say, I'm sorry, I can't. And you're honest, and that's legitimate. If it's legitimate. But sometimes you have the ability, and instead of just doing it, you hope that by delaying the other person or putting them off, hopefully they will just give up and not come back. And you justify it to yourself by saying, if they really need it, they'll come back. And if they don't come back, perhaps they don't really need my help. And they're just, I don't want them to just spin my wheels, so to speak. And if I just say yes to everybody who asks for help, then I'll have to help everybody. But King Solomon says that's not correct. Don't say to your fellow, go and come back tomorrow, and then I'll give you. Because the poor person or the needy person, he wouldn't be coming to you for help if he didn't need it now, if it wasn't urgent to him, if he wasn't not able to sleep at night without the thing or the help that he's asking for. If he's a reasonably self-respecting person, he wouldn't be coming to you to ask for help. And so when you put him off, and you say, go and come back tomorrow, in your mind, you didn't say no, you didn't close the door, and so you feel good about yourself because you actually promised to help them. You just told them, come back tomorrow. So in your mind, you're a good person, you're a righteous person, but that person is suffering right now, and they still don't know if or when or how they're going to get help. And furthermore, they have to come back and trouble themselves to come back to you. And that's if they're in a situation where they need help, every additional difficulty is seemingly impossible for them. And so someone who says, Lech vashuv machar, go and come back tomorrow and I will help you, in a way, it's worse than just saying, sorry, I can't help you. Because when you say, sorry, I can't help you, you know where you stand. You know that you're not a person who has made the choice to give, whether it's justifiably or not, but you know where you stand. And the other person also knows that the help isn't coming here and they can go knock on the next door and hopefully find someone who will help them immediately and solve their problem. So in some way, it's even worse than just refusing the person outright. Okay, verse 29. Al tacharosh al reacha ra'a v'hu yoshev levetach itach. Do not tacharosh. Do not. Tacharosh means like to plow. Like the way you plow a field. Lachrosh et hasadeh. But here it's referring to plotting. So al tacharosh al reacha ra. Do not plot against your fellow evil. Rashi explains, the classical commentator Rashi explains that tacharosh, in this context, it uses the word for plowing because just like before you plant a seed in the ground, you first plow and you prepare the ground to receive the seed. Often we, in our mind, think and plot, oh, what I'm going to do to this guy if I get the chance, and we start to imagine scenarios in the mind of what we would do to get back at someone who we're upset at, let's say. So that's a kind of plowing. It's a mental plowing of the mind to prepare the way for the action at some point. So King Solomon says, don't plot against your fellow evil. Evil means to do something bad to them. V'hu yoshev levetach itach, when he sits securely with you. Yoshev sits, lavetach, securely, itach, with you. So here is another kind of thing that you see all the time with people. You see, he says, don't plan wickedness against your fellow when he sits confidently with you. So you might ask, well, should we ever plan wickedness against our fellow? Perhaps we should never plot wickedness against our fellow, right? Oh, wow. Sultan is watching on Twitch. Sultan, you're the first comment that I've got on this class on Twitch. Welcome. I'm happy to see you here. And I hope that we'll see more people coming into the class from Twitch. By the way, those of you who are watching on the different platforms, you can only see the comments from your platform. But if you watch on the HAPS app, you can see all of the comments. So back to verse 29. King Solomon is saying, so I asked a question. Miko's here too. Hi, Miko. My wife Miko is watching LearnHebrew.tv. Okay, so you might ask yourself, should we ever plot wickedness against somebody else? Right? What's King Solomon telling us? Don't plot wickedness against your fellow while he sits securely with you. Shouldn't he just say, don't plot wickedness against your fellow? So obviously, you shouldn't plot wickedness against your fellow. It's obvious. You shouldn't sit and make plans to harm somebody else. But what King Solomon is telling us is, how often does it happen that there's somebody that you're mad at, or that you want to take revenge on them, but for whatever reason, you're not ready to tell them you're mad at them, and you just keep going on like everything is okay. It's something people do all the time. Someone says to you, "Oh, how are you today?" "Oh, I'm great. Thanks for asking." And then you turn your head and under your breath, you curse them, or you say, "Oh, when I get a chance, I'm going to get that person." You see people doing that all the time. And I would venture to say that all of us do it to some extent. It doesn't necessarily mean that we go to the extent of making plans to harm that person, but all of us at times are guilty of saying one thing with our mouth, showing one face towards people, and in our mind or in our heart thinking something completely different. And so that's what King Solomon is saying. Sultan, who's watching on Twitch, asked, "What are you guys doing here?" "I just came here." "Sultan, welcome. My name is Aaron. I live in Israel. I'm a tour guide and a Torah scribe. And every Monday night and Tuesday night at 9:30 p.m. Israel time, we study the book of Mishlei, which is the book of Proverbs from the original Hebrew text, live streamed on HAPS app, which multi streams or simulcast to YouTube, to Twitter, to Facebook, and to Twitch, which is why you're seeing it. And we've been doing this for 6 classes, which means 3 weeks, and this is the 7th class. We've gotten through most of the first 3 chapters of the book of Proverbs, and now we are on chapter 3, almost at the end, verse 29. And if anybody who's here doesn't understand the Hebrew that we're reading, or isn't able to decipher the characters, so you need to get my wife's book, Learn to Read Hebrew in 6 Weeks, which will teach you very easily how to read these characters in Hebrew that might look like Chinese to you, but they're actually quite simple to read. Some people say they do the book in 6 days instead of 6 weeks, so definitely check it out. And if you speak Spanish, the new Spanish version is available for free for the next 48 hours on Amazon.com. So King Solomon is telling us, obviously, don't plan wickedness against anybody, right? Uh, if you have an enemy or someone, who needs to be punished, or needs to be someone who has tried to hurt you, and you need to somehow do something to make sure that they don't, then there may be certain situations where it's justified. He's not saying turn the other cheek. He's not saying you never pay back somebody for evil they did. If you don't have boundaries and you're not willing to deal with things that people do to you, then everyone will step all over you. Can you do little early? John Ursula asked if I could do a little early. If you mean to schedule the class earlier, you can email me, Aaron@tourguideaaron, and let me know what you have in mind. I'll consider it. But what he's saying is that it's particularly low and despicable when you treat somebody like as if they're your friend, who yoshev levetach itach. He, as far as he knows, he's secure with you. He's sitting securely with you. As far as he knows, you're best of friends. But in your mind, you're plotting to do something to that person or to take revenge against them. That's what King Solomon is saying in verse 29. Now let's move on to verse 30. Again, we have here one spelling, and then in the brackets we have the spelling, how you pronounce it. Al tariv im adam chinam. Do not fight with a person for free, for nothing. Im lo gemalcha ra'ah. If he has not done to you evil. So let's read the words one by one. Al, do not. Tariv, fight or argue. Im, with. Adam, like Adam, it means a man. Chinam, for free, for nothing. Im lo, if he did not Gimalcha, do to you, Ra, evil or bad. So King Solomon is talking here about what we call in the Jewish religion sinat chinam. Sinat chinam is literally translated as free hatred. Free hatred. We're supposed to stay far away from free hatred. We're supposed to have avat chinam, free love, which means our default position about any person that we meet should be love. To love them and to embrace them and to try to do good for them, because every person is created in the image of God. And so our assumption when we meet a person, our default position should be to love them, to embrace them, and to treat them only in a good way. Only after someone has injured you and proven beyond any doubt that you can't give them that benefit of the doubt, you may have to adjust your approach to that individual. But what happens when you meet someone off the streets or at an event or at work? They've never done anything to you, you've never done anything for them, but you just don't like them. They just rub you the wrong way. And if someone will come to you and say, "How come you don't like that person?" You'll say, "They're annoying, they smell funny," or you'll come up with some excuse why you don't like that person. But the not liking comes first, and the excuse comes afterwards to justify the not liking that came the moment you saw the person before you even knew the things that you're now giving as excuses. And not only that, there are other people who you like just fine who do the same things that you're giving as excuses to not like the person we're talking about. So that's called sinat chinam, hating for free, for no reason. Uh, you hate that person or dislike that person not because they did anything to you or injured you or said anything bad about you, just because their vibes don't go well with your vibes. You just feel like it doesn't go. So nobody can control, or I shouldn't say nobody can control, I should say we can't be guaranteed to be able to control how we feel about somebody. We can try to change how we feel about somebody. We can't necessarily change our nature. We can try and we may succeed, but there's no promise that you can change your nature to like somebody who at first you don't like. But what you must not do is al tariv im adam chinam. Do not fight or argue or pick fights with a person for free, for nothing. Im lo gemalcha ra, if he didn't do anything bad to you. Doing that is called sinat chinam. And if we find ourselves moving towards acting or speaking badly about somebody who didn't do anything to justify it just because we don't like the way they are or the way they make us feel, we need to nip that at the bud and cut it off quick, because that's how all forms of corruption, of oppression, come. They all start with just, these are the people I like, and I'm going to be good to them, and these are the people I don't like, and I'm not going to be good to them. And when a person starts choosing who they're going to be good to and who they're not going to be good to, just on how he feels about them, and not based on their merits and their actions, that's a form of corruption. It's a small corruption, and when it's with small people and small matters, it's small corruption. But as the person gains status in the world and becomes more important, hopefully, then it becomes big corruption. Verse 31. Guys, I need to take a break for 30 seconds to rest my throat and to drink my tea. I've been talking now for 35 minutes without stop. So I'm going to play for you this short video of about 30 seconds of my wife, Miko, talking about her book, Learn to Read Hebrew in 6 Weeks. It's the book that I have right up behind me, somewhere there. There we go, on the shelf. Learn to Read Hebrew in 6 Weeks. It's available on Amazon.com or on learnhebrew.tv. It's the best-selling book in the world right now for Hebrew language instruction. And just today, it came out in translation to Spanish. So you watch this for the next 30 seconds, and I'm going to have some tea.
Hi, I'm Miko. I've created a revolutionary method of teaching people to read Hebrew in just 6 weeks. Thousands of people around the world have already used my method successfully. I get emails from people every day about how they've tried other methods with little success, but with my method, they're able to open a Hebrew prayer book or a Hebrew Bible and they can read the Hebrew text. The secret to my method is fun memory tricks and colorful pictures that ensure that you'll remember the sounds the letters make. I've made my method into a beautiful full-color book. In a short time, it's gotten dozens of 5-star rave reviews on Amazon. It makes me so proud to know that people all over the world are able to read Hebrew from my book. If a grandma from Australia, a businessman from Texas, a homeschooler, or an empty nester in California can do it, you can do it too.
Okay, guys, my mic is on. You can hear me. Great. So Pedro has a wonderful question. Let's put that up on the screen. Pedro is watching on YouTube, so I'm going to put the question up on the screen for those of you who are watching on other platforms and don't see his question. Pedro asks, so the principle of sinat chinam would also mean that hatred for a reason is okay. That's an excellent question. The answer is yes, but it's not that simple. You see, let's say, for example, somebody came and murdered someone in your family. Are you permitted to hate that person? Yes, you're permitted to hate that person. Rashi, the classical commentator, says that this verse is not telling us not to hate evil and wicked people, people who do evil deeds. If we don't feel hatred towards evil and wicked people, then we will come to be like them. Uh, if if you see someone doing evil and wickedness and you don't have an aversion to it and you don't have hatred towards them, then you're tolerating that in your soul and your mind, and it's not that far till you start to go in the same path that they're going into. So hatred of wicked people is a healthy and correct thing. Sinat china means that you hate someone not because of what they did, but just because. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to make a list of 100 reasons supposedly why you hate them. But you don't hate them because of any of those reasons. You just hate them because you do. And now you're collecting every little thing against them that you can to say, why you hate them so that you won't feel like a bad person for hating someone. So, sinat chinam does not mean not to hate the wicked. That being said, that is according to the letter of the law. But it's a worthy and correct and praiseworthy thing for someone to strive not to even hate those who deserve to be hated. In other words, to strive to come to a place where you see the fullness of the wickedness of their deeds, you judge those deeds correctly and understand that they're wrong. You're very clear in your mind that you don't want to have anything to do with that path, and yet you hate the deeds without hating the individual. For example, in the classic Hasidic / Kabbalistic work called Tanya by Rabbi Shneir Zalman of Liadi, the founder of the Chabad Lubavitch movement, in chapter 32, he writes that even though the Talmud tells us, based on the Torah, that that you are not only permitted, but you must hate the wicked. Nevertheless, you should try to love them and hate them at the same time. What does it mean, love them and hate them at the same time? You should hate the evil deeds that they do and hate the kind of uh, form that they've taken on, but recognize that still somewhere inside of them is a spark of godliness, since they were created in the image of God, that were they to repent would come to the surface. And so find the place in your heart to also love that person at the same time that you hate them. In other words, to acknowledge the godliness in them, love their essence, which the essence of a person is never corrupted no matter what their deeds are. But your approach to them should be an approach of how you treat someone that you hate, because if not, you're tolerating the evil that they're doing, while at the same time being ready in a second to embrace them with love when they will repent and go on the right path. So that's a sort of approach that we should aspire towards, and hopefully we can achieve. But on a simple level, you must hate wicked people. You must hate them. If you don't hate them, you will become them. Pierre Little, this is a class of Jewish Torah teachings, so it's not a class to discuss what other religions believe. Maybe come in when I do these coffee with Aaron kind of chats sometimes in the morning here. Then you can ask me anything and I'll be happy to discuss it. But now we're sticking to the Torah. Hello in Pakistan, Pastor Sajid. Welcome to the class, watching on Twitter. I'm happy to have you here. Okay, so we're in Proverbs chapter 3. We just finished verse 30, and now we're doing verse 31. Al tikane beish chamas, va'al tivchar b'chol derachav. Now let's read it word by word. Al, do not, tikane, be jealous, beish chamas, of a man of, Hamas means stealing, cheating, etc., etc. A thief, a man who steals and cheats. Ve'al tivchar, and do not choose bechol derachav, in all of his ways. Often we see that the people who cheat, who steal, who cut corners, who deceive, who step on other people, they have great success. They jolt forward in the game of life. They make lots of money. They drive nice cars. They have big houses with lawns that are greener than ours. And it's very easy for a person who's honest and playing according to the rules to start to think to himself, what am I, a sucker? I let that guy have all these things, and here I am playing according to the rules and being honest. And I drive a modest car, and I live in a small house, and I have a bank account with less zeros at the end of the figure. So maybe I should follow in the way that he's going. That's what seems to work. Maybe I'm just beating my head against the wall trying to be righteous, right? So King Solomon says, no, do not, al tikana bi'ish Hamas, do not be jealous of the man of Hamas. Hamas in Hebrew, it's not the name of the terrorist organization Hamas, although it's interesting that it's the same word with the same meaning, with the same pronunciation. Hamas means all kinds of corruption, theft, cheating, corruption, etc., etc. Oh, sorry, you don't see the Hebrew. Thank you. Nancy, it's a good thing someone's watching me. Let's read it again. Al tikaneh, do not be jealous, bi'ish, Hamas, of a man of theft or corruption, ve'al tivchar, and do not choose, bechol dirachav, in all of his ways. So King Solomon is telling us, don't be jealous of those people's success. Don't choose any of their ways. Because actually, They may seem to be successful temporarily, but no person who cheats and cuts corners and does corruption ever succeeds in the long term. Thank you, John Ursula. I think the comment came in before we got it up, but thank you guys for keeping me on my game. So, no person who cheats and cuts corners ultimately wins, because even if they happen to run out the clock in this world and get to the end of life and they still have the fancy car and the big house and the boat and the big bank account, they can't take it with them. And then they have to face God in the next life. And what are they facing God with in the next world if they spent their life cheating and involved in corruption of all kinds? And so King Solomon tells us, don't be jealous of that person. Don't choose their ways. In the end, they will not win. Even if they seem to win in this world, they certainly will not win in the next world. Verse 32. And then he explains why. Ki to'avat Adonai naloz v'et yesharim sodo. Why should you not be jealous of him? Because to'avat, the abomination, Adonai, of God, naloz is the crooked one, ve'et yesharim, and with the straight ones, sodo, is his secret. So, what is the secret that King Solomon is talking about? So, King Solomon is telling us that a person who's crooked, God despises them. Here it uses the word toeva, which means abomination. He despises them. And the one who is straight, God reveals his secret to them. So there's many ways that you can understand the secret that it's talking about. First of all, the obvious secret is the next world. In other words, there's the revealed world that we see in front of our eyes, the physical, corporeal world. And then there's the secret world, so to speak, the world you have to believe in, and you only see it if you merit to see it. So it's a sort of secret. And so King Solomon tells us that Ve'et Yesharim Sodo, God's secret is with the straight ones. That is to say, the reward in the world to come that can't be seen. But the Metzudat David brings a very interesting point. And he says it's not just the world to come, which is the secret that God reveals to the straight ones. He says that one who God loves, one who is straight and follows in the correct and righteous ways, and God loves them, he's constantly revealing things to them that aren't revealed to people who are crooked and corrupt. He gives an example. In the book of Genesis, God decides to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He turns the whole place over. He rains fire and brimstone from heaven upon Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities of the plain. And before he does it, he says to himself, "Hamechaseh ani me'Avraham, will I conceal from Abraham that which I am planning to do?" So it's a very strange verse when you read it. It's like Abraham and God are friends, and friend A is about to go make a big life decision, and he just realized that he never spoke to friend B about it. And when he just goes and does it, and friend B finds out that he did it without talking with him about it, he's going to be insulted. That's what it sounds like when you read it. Will I conceal from Abraham that which I am about to do? It's a very strange verse. The Metzudat David, which is one of the classic commentaries on the Hebrew scripture, says, yes, when a person walks with God on the straight path, God consults with them. He reveals to them. He shows them things which other people don't see. He gives them foresight, gives them wisdom. And he's on a sort of intimate basis with the person who goes in the straight and righteous path. And therefore, even in this world, et yesharim sodo, God's secret is with the straight ones. We have three more verses. Verse 33. Oh, Joel Schultz, welcome. I didn't see you in the class before. I was wondering where you are. I'm glad to see you here. Okay. Me'erat Adonai bebet rasha uneve tzadikim yivarech. Me'erat, the curse, Adonai, of God, bevet rasha, is in the house of the wicked. Uneve, and an oasis or a dwelling, tzadikim, of the righteous, yivarech, will be blessed. So it seems like very simple words. There is a God curses the house of the wicked and blesses the house of the righteous. But if you look carefully at the words, there's more meaning here, because the wicked person's house, he calls it a house. Everyone has a house. But the dwelling of the tzaddikim, of the righteous, he calls it neve. Neve means like an oasis. Neve midbar means a desert oasis. So even though neve, literally, it's also a word for a dwelling, but it implies a sort of a special and uh, uh, unusual dwelling in a place where you shouldn't expect to find one. So since the tzaddikim, the righteous, are a minority in the world, the people who truly walk on the straight path with God are few and far between, and they're a minority. So their house is called a neve, like an oasis. And so that term, neve tzaddikim, the oasis of the righteous, will be blessed just by using that word instead of the word bait, which means house, like it does for the wicked person. Just by using that word, it's telling us a lot. There's a lot of meaning hidden in that word, implied in that word. That first of all, the righteous are few and far between. That their house is an oasis among the desert of the wicked. That even when they're surrounded by wicked people who are like a desert, their little bubble will be protected and be kept holy. And that's the blessing that God will give them when they go on the straight path. Verse 34. Im laletzim hu yalitz v'la'anavim yiten chen. Let's read it inside. Im, if, laletzim, to the clowns, to the scoffers, hu yalitz, he will scoff, v'le'anavim yiten chen. Then to the humble, he will give grace. So King Solomon tells us that he's told us before all these kind of behaviors that people do, sinat chinam, where they hate people for free, where they're achat bepev, achat belev, they say one thing with their mouth while having a different thing in their heart. They tell the person, go back and come back tomorrow. They tell the person, I can't help you, when they could help them. Those people, he's sort of grouping them all together under the category of leitzim, clowns or scoffers, people who don't take their moral responsibility seriously. So King Solomon says that to the scoffers, God will scoff. In other words, he will act with them in a similar way. When they need something, he'll, so to speak, say to them, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Or maybe keep praying to me every day. Maybe tomorrow I will help you, or next week. Let's see, go and come back, right? So he's telling us that exactly how you treat others, that's how God will treat you. V'le'anavim, to the humble ones, which is to say, those people who know their role in the world, and humbleness means putting others before yourself, right? So to them, yiten chen, he will give grace. Give grace means even when you don't deserve, something, you might get it anyway. You give someone a grace period. What's mean a grace period? It means the rent is due, but you give them a 10-day grace period. They don't really deserve another 10 days, but you're just being nice. So God will give you grace. But the word chen in Hebrew doesn't just mean grace, like in the sense of letting you get away with something. A person who's a nosechen, who carries grace, means that others look upon them with grace. So when God gives a person the quality of grace, it causes that everyone they're encounter with wants to give them the benefit of the doubt, wants to uh, be good to them, even though they didn't necessarily earn it. That's someone who God has given them grace. So to the humble ones, God gives grace. Verse 35, and this is the last verse, and it's perfect because we're almost at 1 hour. Kavod chachamim yinchalu uchsilim merim kalon. Let's go back and read it. Kavod, which means honor. Chachamim, the wise ones, yinchalu, will inherit. So the wise ones will inherit honor. Uchsilim, and the fools, merim, who are rebellious, kalon, will inherit disgrace. So the wise ones will inherit honor, and the fools who are rebellious will inherit disgrace. So that really sums up this chapter and this section, where King Solomon tells us that if you seek honor, you don't gain honor by imposing yourself on others. You don't gain honor by cheating or by trying to steal honor. You have to be a chacham, a wise person. The wise person is the one who goes in the way of the Torah, as he's told us many times. And if you go in the way of chokhmah, of wisdom, of the Torah with all your heart, then honor will come to you as well. But the fools, the short-sighted ones who try to grab onto the honor that's not earned, who are rebelliousness, they will inherit kalon, disgrace. So with that, we get to the letter Peh, which means it's the end of the parasha, the end of the section in the original Hebrew scrolls of the book of Mishlei, of Proverbs. And it's also Daled is the fourth letter of the alphabet, which means number 4, chapter 4. It's also where the break is between chapter 3 and chapter 4. Next week, we will start with chapter 4. Thank you so much for joining me. Join me live every Monday night and Thursday night at 9:30 p.m. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, and here on Haps. Also, you can sign up for my email list at tourguideaaron.com, my website. Sign up for the email list, and that way you'll get updates when there's changes to the schedule. Passover is coming up, Pesach, and there will be many changes to the schedule over Pesach as I take time to go do stuff with my family over the holiday. So make sure to sign up for that. Thank you. Shalom.